We heard references that you're going to start to onboard bots in the same way you would employees, and CISAs better get good on their AI bot HR, and so it was.
And then to authorize them like you do, authorize employees.
Welcome to Cyber Focus from the McCrary Institute, where we explore the people and ideas shaping and defending our digital world. I'm your host, Frank Cilluffo, and today we're on set for a special edition looking at an amazing week for RSA and RSAC 2025, and I have one of the movers and shakers for the entire policy program here with us today, Dave Colberg. Dave is a longtime friend. And Dave, I thought we'd start with maybe you giving a sense of your role within RSA and then how the week, your expectations and how the week went.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for having me, Frank.
Privileged to have you, Dave. Good.
Appreciate the opportunity. It's been a busy week. I think we're really safe here right now because everybody's making a mad dash to the airport. So it's a good time to do it. But yeah, so I started working with RSA 13 years ago, and I actually worked for the company RSA initially. And so they had reached out to me 13 years ago and said, hey, we want to have more government and policy experts have a presence at the conference, deliver the message on behalf of the government. So that's where it all began. Fast forward 13 years, and that's exactly what I'm doing this year. It's kind of an advisory role, just making sure that the conference is inviting the right speakers, and giving them a platform to deliver their message, whatever that is.
Exactly.
So, they're just to kind of double click on that. There's some components of the conference that I focus on. One, as you know, is the International Cybersecurity Forum, which takes place at the beginning of the week. It includes 40 or so countries and their top cyber officials, whether it's on the diplomatic side or the operational side. We bring them together in a closed door session with the U.S. delegation.
Track 1.5.
Yeah, right. Absolutely.
Very powerful.
Very similar to that. So we started the week with that forum. I think it was hugely successful. We've grown it every year. And we have no shortage of countries asking to participate. So I think that was a valuable opportunity for the new administration to be exposed to that forum. Absolutely. And then when you get to the main conference, it's really focused on, who are we having keynote, right? The more senior cabinet level officials, some of the leaders in the cyber field and government. And then we have track sessions. But I think, what I'd like to mention is one of the most important opportunities, I think, for government folks who attend the conference is what happens on the margins of the conference.
Absolutely.
Right. And the opportunities to sit down with CEOs one-on-one.
With 50,000 of their best friends, right?
50,000 of their best friends. So we also facilitate some informal roundtables and other opportunities for government folks to hear directly from our audience. So
it's grown dramatically. I mean, every year, maybe I'm getting older, but it feels like it's grown and grown and grown.
Yeah, it really has. And especially when it comes to government participation. It's grown every year.
In addition to ICF, any keynotes and or sessions you'd like to foot stomp?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll just say, the timing of the conference often makes it difficult during an election year to get a lot of the typical folks that people are used to see. Right. So there's still some folks that have yet to be confirmed that aren't, on their
still attending. It shows you how important a
absolutely
conference it is. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. They're still attending. But I think the highlight of this year was Secretary of Homeland Security. Right. Secretary Noem came out. She keynoted. She met with CEOs, spent a lot of valuable time, I think, delivering her message, demystifying some of the actions of the new administration.
CISA.
Right.
Yep.
What's happening around CISA reorg and, how do they plan to empower industry to be more of an active participant in, defending the ecosystem. So some of those conversations were really valuable.
Deputy Secretary as well, right?
The Deputy Secretary came as well, Troy Edgar, and he was fantastic. Got to meet a lot of industry leaders. We hosted him at the International Forum. And then also, some of the subject matter experts. I just finished watching a keynote with Alexei Buliza, the Senior Director for Cyber at the National Security Council, and that was fascinating. It's the first time we've had him out to the conference to do a keynote, and that was hugely successful.
And a lot of, obviously, industry leadership as well as international leadership, both in the quiet behind the scenes sessions and also in the very public sessions. So going into this year, vis-a-vis where we are. And thank you so much for spending some time with us. You must be, I'm dead tired. You must be times two. So
Yeah, no, it's been a busy week, but a valuable week.
what were your thoughts going in vis-a-vis where we are? You hit all your hopes?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and it's, you never really know how the week's going to end up, but it always ends up working out, right? So
Because you have good people.
we have good people. We have a phenomenal team behind the scenes, kind of making sure everything comes off without hitch. And so the week, I think, went really well.
Any themes that sort of raised above the bar for you?
Yeah, and I think coming in, a lot of folks wanted to hear from the new administration. You know,
It's a big deal.
somebody who you know, can deliver that message. Kind of where is their focus going to be? You know, people hear about the CISA reorg and what does that mean for working with industry? And so some of the underlying themes, you know, I'd say top of mind is AI, right? How are we using this technology?
Better say Agentic. So I think I heard a lot of that.
But I think, you know, it's not just AI, but how are we using AI to make unsophisticated defenders sophisticated?
Absolutely.
Right. And that was one of the underlying themes of one of the keynotes that just took place. You know, I think another theme that came out of some of the government sessions were empowering industry, right? Government is not going to be there to tell you what to do and where to go every, you know, every day in and out. But how is the new administration going to empower industry to be a more active participant?
And FBI had a very big presence this year.
They did.
Yeah.
They did. FBI always has a
Yep. And others. Hey, Dave, looking ahead to please.
No, I just wanted to mention what, you know, and the international component of the conference is so important.
Yeah.
So I think two things I want to hit on there.
Please.
One is this is the first year we've had the director of GCHQ
Boom.
speak at the conference. She was
They've
fantastic.
been here before, but not speaking at the
Not speaking
public.
not speaking on the keynote. And and so, you know, I think they had a good week as well from an international standpoint. And then another thing that we've noticed this year, and I want to give credit to Ambassador Brendan Dowling from Australia, because what Australia has done this year is they've actually reached out to some smaller countries in the Asia Pacific region, and they've allowed them to come to the conference on Australia's dime.
On their nickel,
their nickel. And I think that's just a great example of the importance RSA has with the policy and government community.
David, looking ahead to 2026, anything we should be thinking about?
Well, the date change, right? It's conference is.
What is the date? You know?
It's going to be in March.
Okay.
It's going to be a little earlier next year. So, which, you know, we'll meet that challenge. We'll make sure we have, you know, the right folks out here. But, you know, I think another underlying theme I'd want to hit on, and this is just kind of from a philosophical standpoint, the conference is really a community. Right. And that's how they treat everything. We want government folks to be part of that community and to come out and speak and have opportunities to have valuable conversations which drive action.
Absolutely.
Right. So we're going to be more engaged, I think, you know, in between conferences to make sure that we're driving some of those conversations on behalf of the community. But yeah, all in all, just a great week.
Dave, hats off. You pulled it off again. It was an amazing couple of days. And I'm really glad you ended with that point, because that's where I am. Technology, whatever it is, it will change. Human nature doesn't. And if we're going to defeat the bad guys, we got to play. It takes networks to defeat them. And you have built one heck of a network. So thanks for your work this week. Thanks for your work for the past 13 years. And thanks for your work next year. And hopefully we'll have you back on.
Well, thanks to you, Frank.
Thanks, Dave.
Appreciate it.
Keep rocking and rolling. We are now joined by a rock star panel of our senior fellows, starting with Katherine Hennessey, Matt Hayden, Allie King, Bob Kolasky. I think they've all been on our podcast in the past, so I felt what we do here is get into a little more depth and sort of everyone's big takeaways from the conference. Allie, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, sure. So RSA is unique in that I consider it to be 5 conferences in one. You have kind of the glitterati that headlines it, that everybody's trying to find a way to interact with. And then underneath that, you have VC private equity groups, shopping, and then a lot of business going on right there. Underneath that layer, you have the vendor floor, which can be sensory overload. And then, of course, a lot of companies, their senior leadership uses it to do maybe speed dating, maybe touch calls. Even within Forescout, we had 80 meetings teed up. And so that 80 meetings teed up. And many of those I was supporting my leadership on. And then underneath that, where I really live is on the fringe. So a lot of international folks come in.
On the fringe, yeah.
I am on the fringe. I'm on the fringe, on the edge. On the edge. And so a lot of international folks come in, and Dave in the previous segment discussed the community aspect of this. And it definitely provides an excellent opportunity to continue to build that connective tissue with our partners and allies. And so I was really fortunate to be able not only to attend many panels, many of them while off the record, a lot of the themes still kind of permeated throughout. And I'm really excited for everybody else to kind of, provide their perspectives on that piece, but continuing to ensure that we can buy down risk systematically because cyber has no borders. We have a lot of work ahead of us, but very excited to kind of see where things go from here.
Awesome, Matt.
Yeah, it's a good fun time for me because I get to play shopper just like the government does from the defense industrial base side. So we get to walk around and hit the floor and talk to a lot of vendors. I didn't have 80 meetings. That's a lot. But we did hit 12 from day to day. But the challenge we ran into was how do we forecast where we see some of these innovations really catching steam, really being implementable in a real way. And so those kind of get down to brass tacks with vendors to, hey, what's your slick sheet look like? What's past that? Where are some use cases where you're doing it? And how can we play a role in getting that expedited and use our know-how to work from there? So it's very much a work and play trip. But from the policy aspect, it's really great to get a lot of
Work is play. Right?
It is.
In all sincerity.
Yeah. So the policy circuit was fun. We enjoy hearing about where there's a lot of alignment on some issues that you don't really know where everybody is until you start hearing them all jump on one side of the fence or the other. And
Clarity, right? We got a lot more Cyrus.
yes, we didn't have anybody speaking out against like CISA 2015 or anything like that. So that was good. And now we get to go back to DC with all of our notes and make sure we're ready to jump into next week.
Awesome, Katherine. I have to say, Night Dragon puts on a conference within a conference with it's massive. So
Love RSL.
for your amazing.
Yeah, it's kind of our thing. Well, also one of the reasons we do that is because RSA is amazing. We've all been coming here for so many years, but it's so big, as we know, and that's part of the fun. We get to do a lot of fun things, and there are so many established vendors that we've worked with for years, and we want to go to their things. But we Night Dragon especially, and all the investors, I would think, if I can speak for them, they do want to keep the focus on innovation. When we're trying to get through the fun stuff and our friends that we already know that are selling products that are already on the market and pretty widely distributed, we want to get to the next thing. So our themes were very much where are the future threats, where are we headed? I mean, agentic AI was the big question on everybody's mind, and how how it's affecting cyber both on offense and defense. But I guess I would note something that's very interesting is RSA seems to be attracting people who they're security people, but they're trying to figure out how AI is going to serve them in other ways beyond cyber. We just hosted a meeting with our high-powered camera analytics companies for CISOs, because obviously leverages AI in a way that's no one's using today in these guys' environments. So they're coming to RSA to learn about something that I don't really think about as a cyber issue. So I think that's kind of an interesting twist. We did a pitch day. We did a pitch competition at our summit, which was a new addition. But trying to keep it on some of the smaller guys, even though they haven't yet come up into maturity and are sponsoring the cool concerts and things. That's always a priority here. So
Amazing week, and hats off to Night Dragon, because that is worth the price of entree in itself. So Bob?
We're still not sponsoring a cool party here at RSA, but we'll get there. I do think this is a business conference first and foremost, and somebody's come here a number of years, mainly in a policy role, but now shifting to a business role, seeing just as Kath was talking about, seeing the amount of energy around innovating and doing deals and that sort of thing. We haven't talking about the things we traditionally talk about, Frank, on podcasts like this. Everyone seemed to love the phrase cybersecurity is national security this year. I don't think it's probably the first time that phrase has ever been used, but in a lot of different ways. But in this
consistent.
Yeah, but in this term, it was about Volt Typhoon and Salt Typhoon in China, right? So cybersecurity is national security against what could be an existential threat from China. And I think that came through. I was thinking about this last night in terms of what you really have here is this really powerful tool we're going to have as a country if that threat ever does manifest itself. And, the last thing I want is everyone to leave here and say, I need to dedicate all my resources to defending my networks against China. You have to be aware of it. You should be taking that risk seriously. And if we get to another level of escalation, this is the great power of the community, that the community will be activated for national security purposes. The innovation will be activated for national security purposes. And you get here and you have those conversations and you build those relationships. We're at a point in DC where some of the processes where the relationships have existed before, those structures are being torn down a little bit. The relationships still have to exist.
And I might note the transparency to discuss offensive cyber was pretty amazing. I mean, 5 years ago, that would not be on the tip of everyone's tongue. And I think it was. And in recognition that business as usual in itself will not cut it.
And that came from the perception that what China has done through Volt Typhoon is also cyber.
Absolutely.
Right?
It was.
And therefore, I went today to Alexi from the NSC's talk, and he was the most senior White House official who gave a talk, and publicly, and he was talking about kind of that being one of the couple priorities. Like, let's take offensive cyber as something that exists in our toolkit, is not a bad word, and we know how to use it, and we start to talk through the processes when we would deploy and use it in the capability to have it. So, that goes the theme of a little more clarity from the administration of what their goals are in cyber.
So all of you have been in and around CISA for a long time, and you did have the secretary. I think the last secretary from DHS was Tom Ridge, sitting in that role. They've all spoken afterwards, but that's a pretty powerful testament in itself. Anything that leapt out from any of you in terms of Secretary Noem's thoughts?
The good news is we're now hearing that CISA has an intrinsic value and a mission to play, and that is
not being abandoned.
It is not being abandoned. It is not being put on a shelf. It is going to be operationalized in a way that's going to amplify its original mission and core roles, and they're gonna make sure that is where I'm listening for the word modernization to come out any minute now. So instead of just saying do it a different way, look at it from a modernization angle, because there are new tools in the toolbox they can use that, yes, headcounts are a challenge, but that can help with that. And so we're looking to see how they take on some of these newer approaches.
And also too, really grateful for the opportunity that the RSA folks were able to tee up for roundtable with the secretary, and I think I counted 18 CEOs there. And while we can't go into a lot of specifics, she is looking to leverage the talent and the resources and the sense of patriotism moving forward. So I'm excited to see how that gets woven into the strategy in the weeks and months to follow, because that's certainly something that's, to Bob's point, is going to put us in a position to build resiliency. Because while it's great that the administration wants to reinvigorate some of the offensive capabilities that we have, that is a line of effort that's part of a larger strategy, because through the pre-positioning that's already happened on our critical infrastructure and other places, we need to be in a position where we can respond a lot faster.
And again, the fact that you had, and we discussed this briefly with David, but the fact that you had nominees who haven't been confirmed yet also taking the time to listen and have some off-the-record sessions, whether it's the National Cyber Director, whether it's Undersecretary for Management, you name it, that says something that this is the place to be for CISA.
Yeah, can I jump in on CISA just because I feel like I should say there was a little bit of trying to, and I don't want to defend the CISA that I was part of, but I was very proud to be part of the CISA, and I am proud of the work we did there. There's a little bit of picking on CISA and set it a false equivalency with what CISA used to be, and somehow it's going to be dramatically different. The reality is the priorities that the Secretary laid out for CISA are pretty damn consistent. Pretty consistent with the priorities. It's fine to reprioritize that, and if we're going to focus on cyber operations with CISA, great. the next step is to rebuild the trust of the workforce in the new leadership, getting Sean Planky in there at the job and having Sean as a leader of people on behalf of the agency is going to be really important. Sean couldn't talk at RSA because of where he is in the nomination process, but that's going to be a key element here. So while it's a good start to say we've got a vision for what CISA is, that vision has to be pushed to the workforce and it has to be pushed to the partnership.
Couldn't agree more, Katherine.
Yeah, just I think it was important to have a handoff, and that's what they did. I mean, even if they couldn't fully be, in their official capacity, I think this community needed a handoff, and that we got it. So I think we're ready to start as soon as everybody's in their roles.
Awesome. And just one of the things we were listening for was, are there going to be themes that carry over from past admin to future admin? And we heard things like CIRCIA, heard things like secure by design. So there may be some this administration spin on those, but they weren't bad words. They were programs of interest, programs of value, and things that are going to carry forward.
And the whole alphabet soup was out in full force as well. FBI, ONCD, Secret Service, they were all here. And so I agree. I'm not even questioning right, wrong, and different. But the fact is there's some clarity in terms of
I would also add, I think there's room for a refocus on federal cyber. And I think that was clear too. So I think that's okay. I mean, it's not that it wasn't a focus before, but I think it deserves renewed attention. I mean, we have new tools, which I'm sure we're about to talk about, but new ways of thinking about things that are going to be important to how we secure federal networks.
Absolutely. And I might note, Bob, to your point on the workforce, on our panel, we had some congressional leaders speak as well, both from majority and minority. And the majority actually footstomp. Biggest priority for Chairman Green is the workforce, which is consistent. And Maura talked about the importance of SLTT. So I do think we're seeing maybe some of the emphasis being put to state, local, and industry. But
yeah, it's always been a goal here to try to get the community of cyber defenders that are here to be motivated to work on behalf of the public interest, and the government has done that. And so that's what it's important for the government to come put a face on what it is that the government does in cybersecurity and get opportunity. And then to allow for regular communications across industry.
So I brought it up earlier about offense. I think there was also some recognition, and this may be my pet rock, so forgive me, but I think there's some discussion around red lines or lines in the silicon, which Volt Typhoon, in my eyes, clearly crossed a red line. That, to me, I wasn't expecting that to be part of the discussion in so many panels. Any thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, I'll jump in. The challenge that we've seen in the past is that every incident had to be handled as a one-off. And so you would have the diplomatic pressures and the diplomatic conversations that went through all the smartest people in government on how to respond was in a vacuum, as if it didn't happen the day before and won't happen tomorrow. And so what we're starting to hear is that they're going to look at it as a compendium of events and escalate as appropriate to include offensive efforts as well as others. So you're seeing it in the trade space now. We're likely to start to see that in the national security defense space as these things escalate with future events. I think there was a lot of us listening to say, are you going to count Volt Typhoon as something that's happened that demands something now? We didn't hear a bright line on that. That's something that we're listening for.
Absolutely. So buzzword, agentic AI. You brought it up early, Katherine. Anyone want to define that? Maybe it's me. Maybe I'm slow. So, but I think many of our viewers and listeners would appreciate a definition.
I've been falling back on the word agentic, which means comes from agent and agency, right? And I heard a talk today from somebody from Gartner that I thought was very good, and he was a little dismissive of where agentic AI is right
on quadrant
right now. I hope so. So he called agentic AI baby bots with chat interfaces. That's where the state of the technology is, but that's just a moment in time. It's not going to be there later. So it's agency. It is the AI system having the agency to make decisions based on information that is collected to work at a quicker speed. And you can see why that could be very useful in cyber defense, that you're empowering the system to do things that you've trained people to do that is pretty rote. And so the system will do it a lot quicker at scale with cost efficiency and effectiveness. Where that all leads, well, and we'll be talking about that
The reason
Next year.
the reason why it's different is we had AI platforms last year,
Slide Agentic next year is the next.
and you had systems that could find patterns, systems that could do amazing scale, but they were individualized services and efforts. Where the strengths of Agentic comes in is that you actually have the ability to have collaboration amongst these products independent of anything else, and you have the ability for them to reach out into a toolbox and bring other AI services in to bear and to scale and to replicate. We heard references that you're going to start to onboard bots in the same way you would employees, and which says I better get good on their AI bot HR, and so it was
And then to authorize them like you do, authorize employees.
rights and RBAC and all the above. And so we're going to start to see people learning and listening from this, but especially in the federal cyberspace, it's not going to be an immediate injection or crutch on the way we're providing services across the departments and agencies, probably for the next 12 months. And in those 12 months, though, they're going to have to get up to speed, the CISOs across the board, so they know that their architecture supports these types of operations, that their future roadmaps include building in these capabilities as they get new features and new sets. And they're going to have to take those privacy concerns with them so that they have their AI policies structured to allow multiple operational AI bots.
And beyond sort of the national security community focused on sort of exquisite mean sources and all the like, I see this having value also, though, for the DMVs, the TSA, things that all Americans rely on, U.S. Postal Service. Any thoughts on that, Katherine?
Yeah, I mean, I think my thoughts are that agentic AI allows us to, this potential everywhere, but in how we use data, how we collect it, how we warehouse it, how we search it, and how we synthesize it. And so this is a problem everybody's been trying to solve in other areas of national security, and now we're approaching them kind of the same way. So we're seeing this, everyone overuses the word fusion, but it really is. It's kind of like these data lakes, and then how we use them and how AI lets us use them in a really smart way is exactly how, like, we've been sort of envisioning a joint information environment. So these conversations, we're not going to have these conversations about cyber without having them about real world national security challenges. And we think about, like, we're talking about the tactical edge and JADC2 and how we're, cyber and the way we look at the data and how we use the data to solve our cybersecurity challenges, but also our other physical world challenges, I think is a really fascinating place to be. And we have to remember that these are going to be the foundation of some of these huge sweeping goals of the new administration, that people have been not here as much, but they're starting to understand here how things like Golden Dome are connected to the way we just secure data, kind of the old ways that we did things. We're not going to be doing those things without certainly agentic AI, but that's how our cyber world connects to that. None of that's going to happen without what we've sort of been building up to here at RSA Conference.
Well said. And I like the connect to Golden Dome. Catch our episode with Chairman Mike Rogers on Ask, where he went pretty deep on that. Allie, any thoughts on Agentic?
Yeah, and so it's interesting to see how things continue to evolve, but it always kind of pulls me back into three fundamentals that I look at is, like, you have to have clean data sets, which is not always an easy thing to do. You have to secure them all, and you have to train the users, to go back to your workforce point on that. And so I always think of AI under any rubric or any flavor you want to, peanut butter spread across it, as augmented intelligence. And so it certainly is a tool that has to be used responsibly, and you have to have ethics attached to it.
Yeah, a word we're all used to is insider threat, and this changes the aspect of insider threat. The agents coming with their threats. And so there were certainly, if you went and looked for it here, there were certainly people giving talks about the dangers and the science fiction type dangers of this sort of technology. And it's always fun at RSA to see the optimists versus the pessimists, just by the nature of it. It's fundamentally an optimistic conference because there's so much business to have, but you make money by then being a pessimist.
And that's why you want to move from, like, zero trust to negative trust, to take into account of the
Okay, you're dropping the new soundbite, but the truth is I've been told forever, and I'm accused, an optimist is a pessimist with experience. I actually am optimistic here. And I want to close with all of your thoughts since we're on AI and we've had a number of discussions. Who benefits, red or blue, offense, defense? Who ultimately is the big? And I think clearly we all can recognize that all the mapping it against your basic controls and that still is the majority of hacks are based on rudimentary things that people did not implement or implement well enough. So clearly to help rise all boats is the case, but adversarial AI and using it for red is also a case. We'll start with Katherine on this, and then
No. It's so hard to say because I mean I felt like it was one or the other. I was in meetings or briefings or
depends on the day.
that and we've seen a lot of tech that we've seen all of our tech that is leveraging AI, but some in what we would consider newer, more organic ways, like not just laying in AI and just sort of existing methodologies of tools, like tools that are built with AI. One area that has come up a lot is like automated pen testing. So that's a really cool example. And so you start to get really optimistic. But honestly, then you kind of go to different briefings and they're talking about what the threat landscape looks like, the people who really get into it and see it and are really out there defending companies. And it's getting pretty scary too.
So you're both bullish and bearish, is that?
So it's very hard because I feel like maybe if I loaded up my schedule with one versus the other, I'd come away with a net answer, but they kind of balance each other out.
We almost every national security leader I brought in says it benefits the adversary. Almost every, in part because those same automated pen tests can be used by the bad guy. And almost every commercial leader I brought in says actually blue's got a this could actually level the playing field. Bullish, bearish, and why?
Defender's advantage, because if you put both sets of tools mature on both sides, the advantage had always been to the attacker because they could operate
Right now,
weren't able to look.
has remained.
And so then it becomes more of a one-on-one game of chess as opposed to you having to be everywhere all the time. And so it's definitely one where the defender has an increased advantage than they've had in the past.
Can I push back on that for a second, though? Because again, this reminds me very much of the old counterterrorism environment. The good guys have to be right all the time. The bad guys only once. So maybe what we define as success needs to be tempered.
I'd say that right now you're saying that you have to define.
I was just giving you the bullish bearish.
Okay. Well, the answer is that you're scaling.
I like that.
You're scaling to a point where you are everywhere to take on every attacker in a one-on-one with these tools deployed.
Ali Buller,
It's easy to be contrarian, but I am on the side of the defenders just because when it comes down to your crown jewels and what our thresholds are for risk, I think that we're still in a good spot, but definitely it can go either way. So ultimately, it's important for us to continue to align under a national strategy. So I'm really excited to be having these folks come out even before they've been confirmed. I think that shows a commitment and it's an interest for them to kind of get ahead of somewhat of the bureaucracy. And I know why it exists, but there's a little bit of that kind of tossed in. And so I think that we're in a position to be able to do more of this operational collaboration, which is absolutely necessary to also include the AI functions.
Brownie points for the operational collaboration. Bob.
I'm going to stick with bullish. One government presence out here that we haven't talked about that I was happy with DARPA, and they had something called the AI Cyber Challenge for Critical Infrastructure. And basically what they were pitching is a grand challenge to use AI to defend operational technology in critical infrastructure and to eradicate cyber. That's, I took a look at it. I can't evaluate the technologies at this point. I guess they've down selected to 7 technologies, and they're going to make the 3 or 4 winners announced at DEF CON this year. But it goes to the point of using this for the cyber poor a little bit, which is something we're all pretty interested in. Can we use AI to help protect hospitals and water facility control systems and things like that? And that's something that we're never going to scale the workforce to do. So for cyber defense to be successful at that level, can technology scale scale cyber defense? And let's see.
Last word, parting thoughts from each of you. Bob, we'll start with you.
I just wanted to mention on Monday, I think a lot of us learned that Robert Metzger passed away. I'd seen Bob the last couple of years here, and, he is somebody who was, one of the giants in cyber law and regulatory law, particularly in the defense industrial base. Katherine and I had dinner with him a couple of years ago. And so just want to, end with mentioning, how great a man he was.
And it's the community, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Looking forward to transitioning completely to East Coast time. The jet lag was a little rough, but it was a great conference, and can't do everything.
I don't know what time zone you're in, Allie. You're all around the world.
Yeah, you can't do everything, but certainly it's super valuable. So I appreciate the opportunity to be here again.
Thank you. And that
Looking forward to getting back and just continuing the conversation, because sometimes we get this sandbagging of, I'm gonna save my good conversations for RSA, and then you get it out and you're like, okay, now we can have that expanded conversation and build on sort of the fun topics that lead into the DEF CON at the other end.
Katherine, bring us home. End of RSA.
Yeah. Okay. I would also say, along the lines of just noting that a loss in the community is Amit Iran, who is known to us all. And I mean, I never worked for his companies, but man, I was so respectful of what he built and just his legacy, being both a government person and then moving on to the tech side. Yep, absolutely. And just really a foundational pillar in the community, I would say. But on the positive side, I noted, and perhaps because I met a few through you, but I just felt a really good presence of our European and international allied partners here. And I know they're always here, and maybe they had a little bit more attention because there were a few less U.S. government people able to come out. But man, I thought that we had a lot of really great interactions with them. They were included. I went to some of their things, and I just think there's probably more interest in intersecting with innovation here and the security community that we can build on. So I thought that was exciting.
And it does take networks to defeat networks, and they have to be in that same foxhole. And thank you both for recognizing, because that is what it's about. It's about the people in the end. And Amit was a dear, dear friend. And I want to thank all of you for spending some time with us. I know this is at the end of a very busy week. Wish everyone a safe trip back, and thank you. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Cyber Focus. If you liked what you heard, please consider subscribing. Your ratings and reviews help us reach more listeners. Drop us a line if you have any ideas in terms of topics, themes, or individuals you'd like for us to host. Until next time, stay safe, stay informed, and stay curious.